There's times like this. Maybe we'll do it next week. I don't know. We'll arrange our music and our service without technology. Because when it messes up, it messes a lot of stuff up. Good old thing. We knew we were down one mic, and then we lost another mic just today, and so we make do. Well, we're continuing in our study of Judges. Last week we covered Joshua 11, the northern tribes. Now, what the theme of chapter 11 was, that the land, at the very last verse of chapter 11, the land had rest from war. This is Joshua's battles were over. And that's where we now come into a new section in the book of Joshua. That is, I sound a little loud. Am I a little loud? I want to turn me down just a little bit. I know, Shannon. I have to be as loud as I can for Shane to get through to his head. But his big head. Oh. We're coming to a section here, starting in chapter 12 and on for quite a few chapters that would be kind of considered one of those dry parts. We come to, genealogies, and we go, why is there genealogies? I remember the first time when I was 18, and God was moving my life, and I finally opened the Bible of my own accord for once, and it was just a New Testament copy, and it was in King James, and I flipped to Matthew 1, and it said, such and such begat such and such, such and such begat such and such, such and such begat such and such, and I was like, and why do I need to know all this? I was like, come on, Lord, I wanted something inspired. I wanted something good. But they're here for a reason. Here we have the descriptions of the land conquered that's going on. It's starting in the first part of verse 12. This is important to have this. It makes it historical fact. I think of Glenn and Bernice, just because I was up with your brother in Weaverville, about, you love genealogies, right? Going back and studying the genealogies of your family, right? And tracing as far back as you can go. And some people just roll their eyes at genealogies, like, oh, why do we know about dead people? But it's your historical fact. We can say, I had ancestors lived here. Before that, our family was from here. Before that, our family was from here. We could trace it all the way back. My family could trace all the way back to Germany. And it speaks that actually can establish your historical fact of your family. And that's an important reason why we have genealogies in the Bible. It's to establish that historical fact. Think to the times of kings in Europe, the medieval times. They'd establish their royal credentials by showing their lineage, by showing their genealogies. And that's why we have those. It's critical to have those in the Bible. I'm so thankful that God preserved those for us, so they could show how much of the historical facts it is. And even when we get into this conquest description of the areas and the kings we have in Joshua 12, it establishes how historically based these facts are. They didn't just say, well, once upon a time, the nation of Israel conquered this nation roughly over here. No, this is historical fact. If we were doing this in a Wednesday night Bible study, I would love to really delve into each one of the places. It'd be a lot of fun. We could spend a lot of time. I'm a history buff too, and a geography buff, so I'd get all in this. This is a lot of fun. That might get long and tedious on a sermon setting. I know it's a little warm here because we can't run the swamp coolers because they're broke. So I'm going to not dive too hard into chapter 12, but we'll bring up some good points to orient us as we go through chapter 12. Before we get into reading it, we want to make sure we cover our theme verse. Of course, Joshua 1:9. Let's say it together. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Joshua 1:9. That's a great, I was just thinking as I was saying that, when you're trying to track down paperwork and this was for Joshua going to battles. That's where like tracking down paperwork, trying to find the finances for recovery efforts and building. And this is a good verse for you. But don't be dismayed at how slow the government's working, because the Lord is with you wherever you're going. Okay, trust me. That's a good verse for right now, man. So anyway, so we have chapter 12. And it's in two divisions. The first 6 verses cover Moses as a conquest to the east of the Jordan. Remember, he was not allowed to come into the promised land west of the Jordan. Then the rest of the chapter covers Joshua. And I'm actually going to show you the map before we read it. I know I usually go into reading it, but it helps. I'm going to get you oriented in all these names because there's going to be a lot of names thrown at you. So the red is where they've conquered. Because actually, next chapter, we're going to get a list of the areas that have yet to be conquered. And you'll actually notice, like Jerusalem, which at that time was known as Jegus, is unconquered. Because they haven't conquered Jerusalem yet. But this here on the west side, east side, let me see if I can get down a little bit better right now. Is that better? Or is that better?
No, better here. Still don't look gray.
There we go. Yeah, it's kind of a pink or something like that, right? So you'll see this side here. This is the Jordan River here. And so this side is the part that Moses conquered. And this is the area that Joshua conquered. And so a lot of these areas here are listed under this still to be conquered areas. So I'm going to leave this up as we read. And I'm going to do something a little different. For those that went through the Genesis study here, almost like 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, at times I would play the Hebrew Bible. So you can actually hear it being read in Hebrew. And I thought this is actually a really good spot to do that. So we know our Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew. Josh was originally written in Hebrew. And that's why a lot of the names have been Anglicized, Americanized, to make it easier for us to pronounce. But sometimes it's kind of fun to hear the names in the Hebrew. And so the first part of the chapter will be a little hard to follow along. So if you don't have a Bible, make sure you grab it, because that way you can follow along and see the names. You can listen for Israel. Whenever you hear the word Adonai, that's Lord. They don't ever say Yahweh, the Jews don't. They say Adonai instead. And then you can look for the place names to help you, and I'll call out the verse numbers. But then if you look, just to orient you, starting in verse 9, it starts getting, starting in verse 9, and it starts just listing off the kings. The king of Jericho, 1. The king of Ai, just like Bethel, 1. So this way you'll be able to hear all of those names. So from verse 9 to verse 24, you'll be able to hear all those place names in the Hebrew, which is kind of cool to hear. This is a rabbi that reads it for us. So I'll try to call out where we are in case you get lost in the first part. But you'll quickly learn that the Hebrew word for king is melech. You'll listen for that, melech. And sometimes the words are in different order. The Hebrew language is all totally different from English. So it might be in slightly different order. But listen for the place names as we go through. That'll help you. Listen for Israel. Listen for Arnon and Hamon and Amor. As you hear him talk, you'll see why I'm talking like that. So you got your Bibles, Joshua 12. Grab the black Bible in front of you if you want to use that. Get your page number to put it. 180? 88. 188 in the Black Pew Bible, so feel free to use that too. And we're going to listen to Joshua 12 being read in the Hebrew. Everyone ready? Everyone prepared? You got your eyes on your Bible? Because it's going to go fast to start. All right, here we go. Hopefully it works. Hopefully it works. Of course, it worked this morning when I tried it, and now it's not working. Oh, you know what? I might have to do one thing right quick. Sorry for the technical problems. This is supposed to be really cool. Okay. You know what? It's all right. Not supposed to do that. Okay. I'll audible out of that. Everyone still ready? There we go.
פרק י"ב ואלה מלכי הארץ אשר היכו בני ישראל וירשו את ארצם בעבר הירדן מזרחה השמש מנחל ארנון עד הר חרמון וכל הערבה מזרחה. סיחון מלך האמורי היושב בחשבון מושל מערוער אשר על שפת נחל ארנון ותוך הנחל וחצי הגלעד ועד יבוק הנחל גבול בני עמון והערבה עד ים כנרות מזרחה ועד ים הערבה ים המלח מזרחה דרך בית הישימות ומתימן תחת אשדות הפסגה ובגבול עוב מלך הבשן מיתר הרפאים היושב בעשתרות ובאדרעי ומושל בהר חרמון ובסלחה ובכל הבשן עד גבול הגשורי והמעכתי וחצי הגלעד גבול סיחון מלך חשבון.
6.
משה עבד אדוני ובני ישראל יקום ויתנח משה עבד אדוני ירושה לראובני ולגדי ולחצי שבט המנשה ואלה מלכי הארץ אשר היכה יהושע ובני ישראל בעבר הירדן ימה מבעל גד בבקעת הלבנון ועד ההר החלק העולה שעירה ויתנח יהושע לשבטי ישראל ירושה כמחלקותם.
8.
בהר ובשפלה ובערבה ובאשדות ובמדבר ובנגב החיתי האמורי והכנעני הפריזי החיבי והיבוסי. מלך יריחו אחד מלך העי אשר מצד בית אל אחד מלך ירושלים אחד מלך חברון אחד מלך ירמות אחד מלך לכיש אחד מלך עגלון אחד מלך גזר אחד מלך דביר אחד מלך גדר אחד מלך חורמה אחד מלך ערד אחד מלך לבנה אחד מלך עדולם אחד מלך מקדה אחד מלך בית אל אחד מלך תפוח אחד מלך חפר אחד מלך אפק אחד מלך לשרון אחד מלך מדון אחד מלך חצור אחד מלך שמרון מרעון אחד מלך עכשיו אחד מלך תענך אחד מלך מגידו אחד
22.
מלך קדש אחד מלך יוקנעם לכרמל אחד מלך דור לנפת דור אחד מלך גויים לגלגל אחד מלך תרצה אחד כל מלכים 31.
All right. You guys follow that all along? You know, Teresa volunteered to read it for us, but she backed out at the last second, so I had to do that. Yeah. Oh, I think it's so cool to hear those names in the Hebrew, because oftentimes we don't know how to pronounce them in the English. So I probably didn't help you in knowing how to pronounce them in English, but it's cool to hear it in the original language, especially in a long list like what we had there. So we have here, where am I at my notes? So in ancient Near Eastern, like back in this time, it was customary after a conquest to have like this conquest roll, like this list. We know from we have archaeological evidence from Thutmose III, one of the Egyptian pharaohs, that he had a conquest, a roll of conquests he did. But there's a big difference between the conquest lists of the ancient Near East and what we have here. Because in the ancient Near East, it was Thutmose III wrote, I conquered this. I destroyed this. I defeated this. It's all I. I mean, they pointed the credit to themselves. But what do we have here? It's all third person. You know, Israel, Joshua conquered. And they're not wanting to take the credit. It's just more a matter of fact. Hey, this was our conquered. This is what we conquered. They're not bragging about it. They're just being matter of fact about it. I like that. If you see the emphasis here is on the kings. There is a brief parts in there that describe locations, but what's in verse 9 through 24? It's all about the kings. Because remember also this that they defeated the king of Jerusalem, but they haven't actually taken the town of Jerusalem yet. That was when the king of Jerusalem organized a little coalition against them, and they defeated them and then executed them. So it's about the kings. It's all about the kings. And these kings, we call them city-states. Each one of these little towns, Ai, Jericho, were all independent. That's why they all had their own king. Even though they were a king of one country, they still call themselves kings. And so they're independent. And oftentimes they're clashing with one another, not getting on, trying to undercut one another. They were rivals. But now we see all of those kings, if you take all the red together, that's 33 kings, all done. And now, under one rulership, one nation, one king. And we're going to come back to that. So let's dive in, verses 1 through 6. This lists the two kings conquered by Moses, Sihon. They were ruled out of Heshbon. We got it cut off. That's weird. Man, that's going to mess things up. Let me reset this real quick, see if I can get it to go. As it cuts off, hold on to that. What did I say earlier about technology and how great it is? Yeah. There we go. There's Heshbon. So Heshbon, that's where that was his succeeded rule. Heshbon. And actually, what's kind of cool, I wish I could find a topographical map. If I had like 2 or 3 hours to go into this, I'd love to go into it. But you can see there's kind of a river here. This is actually a major gorge. And so that's makes sense militarily that you can have a border for the gorge, sort of cross over and go over that. So he ruled from the gorge, the Arnon Gorge, all the way up to the Jabbok River, and that's right here by Succoth. That's the Jabbok River. It's about halfway between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is what they call the Sea of Salt. It's the Dead Sea because it's full of salt. They give it two names in here, so don't be confused with it. It says in the Sea of Chinnereth, there's the Sea of Galilee up at the top. That gives you that. So he ruled there on the south. Sea of Arabot, Salt Sea, that's all the Dead Sea, what we now call the Dead Sea. So he ruled down here on the south, and he ruled up here on the side here. Sihon. But then the other king, Og. That's a name. What's your name? Og. Og. Yeah. But we see this in verses 4 and 5. He ruled out of Bashan. The Bashan, his area. You see the region now listed up there. He ruled up on the northern part. He lived at Ashtaroth, which we have up here at the top. And then there's an interesting little tidbit given about Og, when it says remnant of the Rephaim. This was another giant race. People just like the Anakim, that we talked about last week. Anakim were the giants that when Moses sent the 12 spies in the promised land, and the spies saw the giants, 10 of them came back and said, "Oh, we can't take it." That was Anakim. But we talked about last week how he actually wiped out the Anakim and the rest of his conquerors. But there's an interesting tidbit about Og in Deuteronomy 3. I think this is just funny. Moses actually records the size of Og's bed. And it's 13 feet by 6 foot. So that's a little bit bigger than a cow king, I think. So these were big guys. To have it 13 feet tall, I think even Glenn would have room on 13 feet tall. So I thought this a very funny tidbit to know the bedside. Bedside. And then that's a little tidbit about him. But verse 6, it gets into, on the page here, why it's important. Because that's who Moses defeated. The servant of the Lord and people of Israel defeated him. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave the land for possession to the Reubenites and the Gadites and half tribe of Manasseh. We're going to get into the more of the allotments later, but this is where the Gadites and the Reubenites and Manasseh would be at. But it's important to have this recollection also, because remember when Joshua sent the spies to Jericho, what news, what intel was it that was scaring the people and that actually led Rahab to find faith in the Lord? It was the news of Moses' conquests. It was the news of what Moses was doing that had him shaking in their boots. That's why it's very important to have it. And it's also that news that would lead the Gibeonites to seek peace with them. So that's verses 1 through 6. I'm going to do a recap before we really get into it. And then we get into 7 through 24. The 31 kings defeated by Joshua. And it starts off with, in verses 7 through 8, this recaps the area. There in verse 7 and into verse 8, the area it gives. And that's where, it's archaeological wise, it's fun to go in and try to, they found, a lot of it. They call them tells. If you ever read, like there's a biblical archaeology review magazine, I have more of those, I gotta find them. But you'll see them, they call them tells. That just means, I don't know why, there's probably a reason, I don't know off the top of my head, but when they find an old site of a city there, back in Israel, they call it tell and then a name. So what they give it. And they've gone around and to find the location of all these towns listed here in Joshua. So it's a lot of fun to go in and do that. But they get into it. They list all the different areas. They list the people groups there at the end of verse 8. The land of the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, all the ites. There's so many of them. Then we get into the list proper. Very list. Lots of repetition. But it's very important that they get all of these. Because think about it. Another thing we make a list for is grocery shopping, right? I hope some people make lists. If you don't, you probably end up buying a lot more than what you end up planning for. But right, you make a grocery list, and what is a successful grocery shopping list? When you can cross off every single one on there, right? A lot of times, Catherine will give me a list, and I can't get it all the way off. I'll say, sorry, I wasn't able to find everything. That wasn't a successful grocery shopping trip. But when you can cross off everything on that list, yes! You came out to the grocery store dancing, doing the jig. Does anyone else do that? Am I the only one that does that? Oh, man. Okay. If you see me at Winco, don't watch me, okay? But yeah, that makes it complete, right? Because you get every little item, even on a long list. And that's why it's important here, even though it seems like just a long list of what, it shows the completeness of Joshua conquering, according to what God wanted them to conquer at that time. And it shows the total defeat I mean, I'm thinking of even when you get to that, I don't know if you can remember that feeling we had when we were listening to it. When we finally got to the end, how did you feel? Like, oh, finally done with that, right? Because you're just like, man, that's exhausting, that's long, and that's intentional. It's to make you. But if you do a little bit of study on the list, it is broken up into logical sections, chronological sections. If you go into verse 10 through 12, what are the towns mentioned? Jerusalem. Well, actually starts off, in verse 9 with Jericho and Ai, the very first conquests. Then in verse 10, it gets into Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. What were the key things about those 5 kings? They were the 5 kings that joined together to attack Gibeon. And then Israel came, and that's when the day was extended. The precision-guided hailstones came down and killed their armies, and then they executed the 5 kings at Makkedah. So that's a logical grouping of when that happened, those 5 kings right there. And then after Eglon, you have Gezer, Debir, Gitter, Hormah. And there's a lot of ones all listed there through verse 16. And those are the cities conquered in this southern campaign. Remember, the first one is at Jericho and Ai. Then they had to beat back the attack by the 5 kings, wiped out their armies for the most part. So then they went and conquered to the south and conquered those kings. But they, not the ones who they didn't execute at Makkedah. Then you pick it back up in verse 16, at the end of it, Babel, Tapua, Hefer, Aphek, Lasharon. Those are cities that actually aren't mentioned anywhere else in Joshua. It's part of the conquest. But those are more centrally located. So it would have made sense that after swinging down from the south, as they make their way back up to that, they continue to conquer more cities. It's logical. Then we jump to verse 19. King of Madon, the king of Hatzor, the king of Shimron, and Abshah. Never say that. Abshah. Never say that word. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Those are the 4 kings that allied against Israel from the north. And so he took care of them. And then 21 through 24 is the rest of the kings that were conquered on the rest of their northern campaign. So it's a very logical, flowing list. Chronological, geographical together. It's all good. It's an exhaustive list. I mean, it really shows the triumph of God. All these multiple city-states that are constantly bickering with one another, rivals with one another, trade wars with one another, outright wars with one another, are now all united under one nation and one ruler. From more than 31 kings, 33 kings, to one king, Yahweh. The king of the earth, who reigns over all nations. The greatly exalted one has united all of these. The focus of this chapter is kingship. The transfer of the many kings of Canaan to the single kingship of Yahweh. Now, how does this all apply to us? Well, we got to remember that we all have a king of our lives. And we may not have, we're not in Britain, so we don't have a king or a queen that sits there, but we have a king, someone or something that's in charge of us, that controls us, that directs us, on a societal level, kind of a macro, big level. We have people over us. We have a president. We have a governor. We have senators. We have representatives. We have sheriffs. We have county supervisors. If we had them, we'd have mayors. Etc. And those on down. Those are good things, right? That's for good societal order. Romans 13 says, hey, obey them because they're in power because God put them there. Because there's truly only one powerful, and that's God. They help a society function. They help keep people safe. Romans 13 even tells us that, hey, you'd be even better pay your taxes to them. We don't like hearing that. Those are good things. But on a personal level, not a societal level, but a personal level, we always have something that we allow to be the driving force in our lives. Our king, our ruler, our God. We will have something. Hopefully, you guys profess Jesus as your king. That's your driving force. That is your motivator. That's what directs your life. And I pray your life reflects that. Some people have money as the motivating driver. Money is their God, their king. They even go to the point of where people's families become their God, become their driving force, their possessions, whatever it may be. Some people like to say, "Oh, I have no king, and I have no ruler over me, and nothing controls me." Well, then it's their self-sufficiency, their pride, their own reason, which is their king. Thinking they don't need anything. They don't need a God. They don't need anyone over them. But guess what? They truly don't. They just want to be their own king. They think their own reason rules over all. In today's culture especially, it's really easy to fall into so many other areas. Social media is huge. Those who know younger, people, they're trapped by Facebook. They're trapped by what people think about. They don't carry on conversations unless it's over social media, over texting. That is their God. That is where they find their self-worth. People find it in fitness or their self-image. They're so caught up in it, that's their driving force in everything they do. So they look good. Money. Relationships. Physical issues. We can have a lot of people I know that struggle with physical ailments. Is that ruling your life? Is that controlling your life? We can let pets. I love pets. I've always been an animal person. But they shouldn't control our lives and drive our lives. Worry. Self-doubt. Those are huge in today's society now, tied in with finding value on social media, finding value in how many likes you get on a Facebook post. I'll be honest, I started to fall into that trap. Until this evacuation, I never had Facebook on my phone because I didn't want it. But then when we were evacuated and that was our primary way of being in contact with people, I finally, I'll install Facebook Messenger on my phone, finally do it. And then because it was so easy, man, I started, why don't I have more likes on my posts? Why haven't more people responded to my birthday on Facebook? I've started falling into those traps. It's so stinking easy. Because that's what's shoved down our throats. That becomes our king. We can't say that we serve no king, no ruler. There is something in our life that drives us, that points us, that rules over us. What is yours? Second point. Jesus is the only rightful king. Jesus is the only rightful king. Didn't you remember the old Disney movie, The Lion King? I got my kids perked up. The Lion King, right? With Mufasa, voiced by James Earl Jones, the very deep voice. There's the lion who's the king of the pride, and his son Simba, right, was going to be the king. But in the movie, the evil uncle, Scar. It was Scar, right, kids? Okay. Scar ended up, killing Mufasa and then getting it blamed on Simba, and Simba has to run away. And then after a period of time, Simba grows into a mighty lion and comes back and takes over his throne. But earlier in the movie, when Simba's still a little cub, there's a fun little song that he sings. I just can't wait to be king. Right? I just can't wait to be king. Sorry, I don't sound as good as he does. In that, he expresses his desire to be in charge. He doesn't have to obey. Here's some of the lyrics from that song, which our kids sing, so be careful about Disney songs. I'm going to be a mighty king, set enemies beware. I'm going to be the main event like no king before. Thinks pretty highly of himself, doesn't he? I'm brushing up on looking down on people around him because he's king. I'm working on my roar. Free to run around all day, free to do it all my way. Everywhere I look, I'm standing in the spotlight. Oh, I just can't wait to be king. Sounds like a lot of earthly kings, earthly powers we have. I think these Canaanite kings, if they could watch this movie, they would love this song. That'd be kind of weird having the Canaanite kings watch the Lion King, but they would figure it out. But we have Canaanite kings of today. Politicians, religious leaders, athletes, actors, actresses, musicians, activists. They all say, follow me, follow me. They want people to follow. This thing that's tying back into social media. Think of Facebook. You can be friends, and then there's a little follow button. People can go look at so many people following them. You can go on Instagram, which I don't use. I think you can follow people on Instagram. All these things, they want people to follow them, to look at them, to be in the spotlight. They eagerly want it. They desire it. They really have no credentials to be the king of our lives. Only Jesus is the rightful king. The rightful king. And I capitalize that king too. Because all the people that have walked the land of the earth, there's only one. Jesus, I was appointed by Yahweh, the Creator God, to be the king of this earth. Yahweh established a Davidic throne back with King David. And that lasted for over 400 years. And it ended with when King Jehoiakim died in Babylon. And Israel would return and they rebuild. They rebuilt Jerusalem. But they did not reestablish the mind. They kept looking for the new Davidic ruler to come. And that would be Jesus. Talked about genealogies earlier. That's why we have Matthew chapter 1. If there's going to be a king to rule over all the earth, he better have the credentials. That's why we have Matthew 1 that links Jesus all the way back to David as the rightful successor to the throne. These other people that want people to follow them have no claim to kingship. They have no claim to wanting to control people. All these people, politicians, athletes, rock stars, actors, activists, they have nothing compared to Jesus, the truly rightful king. We'll also see that Jesus is the right kind of king. Remember, these Canaanite kings, they conspired, they extorted one another, they killed each other's families. They put other people down to get their own. They were bad kings. But Jesus is the right kind of king in several different ways. The first one we'll see is that he is a good king. He is a good king. Well, it seems like I'm stating the obvious, but we need to look at that. He is a good king. He did good things. In Acts chapter 10, Peter is talking with Cornelius. And he says this, "You yourselves know what happened throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee after the baptism that John proclaimed, how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit with power. He went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by the devil, for God was with him." He did good. He was a good king. He is a good king. And he did more than that. He healed those oppressed by the devil. Now, in today's world, do you see the powerful people, those actors, athletes, politicians, those powerful religious leaders? Are they out there spending time with the mentally ill, the unclean, the unkempt, the depressed, the lonely, or the grieving? On the other hand, Jesus went right to those people. He went right up to the demon-possessed, to the deranged, to the dirty, and he helped them. He is not a king who oppresses, who steps on others in order to get what he wants. Instead, this is one of his royal decrees: "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." This is a good king. It's a good king. Another thing that makes him the right kind of king is he is a king who saves. While he was still in his mother's womb, Joseph was struggling with what to do, whether he should, cut Mary off. An angel appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "You'll name him Jesus because he will save his people from their sin." So while still in utero, he was there to save. Jump forward to Zacchaeus, the crooked tax collector. And he repents of everything he does and gives his life to Christ. But what does Jesus say? Today, salvation has come to this house. Jesus came to seek and save the lost. It doesn't matter who you are. He calls everybody to repentance. Religious, irreligious, healthy or sick, rich or poor. We are living a life that is displeasing to God, and Jesus came to save us. So in the Old Testament, the word for to save has kind of two senses to it. One is to rescue out of troubles, and then the other is to help in the midst of it. So you can be saved by being pulled out of it and getting entirely out of it, or while you're in the midst of the troubles, receive help to get through it. I think we see Jesus save us and rescue us and those type of things all the time. A lot of us are going through troubles right now. And Jesus probably isn't going to reach out and pull us out of those, but he's going to come when we're in the midst of all of our troubles and help us through it. He rescues us from the lies. He rescues us from the chain of sin that binds us in slavery. His power bails us out of troubles we get into. His grace gently lifts us up. His patience embraces us when we fail. His joy, His peace fill us when we're discouraged, when we're depressed. He is helping us in anything we need. We need it. He saves us. Those who are displeasing to God, He saves us. Have you ever heard of the movie Amazing Grace? It's a movie about William Wilberforce back in Britain. back in the early 1800s, William Wilberforce was a big proponent of ending slavery in Britain, and he was able to bring it about. But his big spiritual mentor, and he's featured a lot in this movie, is a guy named John Newton, who actually wrote the lyrics to Amazing Grace. He was William's spiritual mentor. Now, John Newton, he was a powerful preacher, a leader in the church back over there. And as he was getting older, his mind started to fail. He was 82 years old. He got up and he wanted to preach one more time, but in the midst of it, he just lost a string of thought. His mind couldn't recover, and he just stood there. And they had to lead him off away from the pulpit. His health continued to decline. And back in Christmas of 1807, a few days before, he could barely talk. But he wanted to say one last thing. He and his friend William Jay was with him. And William Jay had to lean really close to be able to hear him. And John Newton, once a powerful preacher, a leader in the church in Britain, a mentor of William Wilberforce, who led the end of slavery, writer of Amazing Grace, he said these words: "My memory is nearly gone, but I remember two things: that I am a great sinner." And he paused to catch his breath. And then he said this: "and that Christ is a great Savior." We are great sinners, but Christ is an even greater Savior. Next, Jesus is also the victor over all other kings. Canaan, there were 33 kings, down to one. In today's world, there's many power struggles going on, but in the end, there's only going to be one. Only going to be one king. Reading out of Revelation 19, 11 through 16. Then I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, the one sitting on it called Faithful and True. This is Jesus sitting on the white horse. And in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems. He has his name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. To bring you back to John 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, the Word was God. But verse 14, his name is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. And from his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. And he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh he has a name written: King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is the victor over all other kings. There will continue to be powers rising and falling, influential people rising and falling, but in the end, in the final rebellion, Jesus alone will stand as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. It's guaranteed. So who are you going to serve? Who is your king? For you to decide. Let's pray. Father, as we come before you and we see you, how You worked in the time of Joshua and just utterly destroyed these kings to unite them under your lordship, your kingship. Father, as we come and look at our lives, we can, kind of like the Canaanites, Lord, honestly, we can be struggling with many kings struggling to have power over our lives, many influences, many desires and struggles to rule over our lives. And we need to pick, what are we going to serve? Lord, are we going to serve the world? What the world tells us? Or are we going to serve you? Because you are the rightful king. You're the right kind of king. You are going to be the King of kings and Lord of lords. Lord, I pray now be moving in us to follow your kingship, to follow your lordship today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.